This is the BBC Home Service. Here is a special bulletin read by John Snagg. D-Day has come. Early this morning, the Allies began the assault on the northwestern face of Hitler's European fortress. The first official news came just after 9:30, when Supreme Headquarters of the Allied Expeditionary Force issued Communique Number 1. This said, under the command of General Eisenhower, Allied naval forces supported by strong air forces began landing Allied armies this morning on the northern coast of France. As announced a little later, this army group includes British, Canadian, and United States forces. The Allied Commander-in-Chief, General Eisenhower, has issued an order of the day addressed to each individual of the Allied Expeditionary Force. Your enemy is well-trained, well-equipped, and battle-hardened. He will fight savagely. But this is the year 1944. The tide has turned. The free men of the world are marching together to victory. I have full confidence in your courage, devotion to duty, and skill in battle. You will accept nothing less than full victory.
Maybe this has achieved some kind of folklore status, mythical part of our past, that's still accessible. Every time I come to this part of the world, I feel a deep connection for everything that went on in this area during the war. From the windswept beaches along the French coast, to the narrow lanes, rolling hills, and small villages, the legacy of this momentous battle remains, and still holds a fascination for thousands of people. We take you on a tour of those beaches and explore beyond the landing grounds. From the western flank at Sainte-Mère-Église to the eastern flank of Pegasus Bridge, with living history groups in the footsteps of D-Day veteran heroes, as the battle for Normandy and the liberation of Europe took its bloody course. One of the first things that strikes a visitor is the size of the conflict here. It's a huge battlefield. Massive. It is no understatement to say that the success or failure of this, the largest ever sea and airborne invasion, set the scene for the geopolitical map of Europe and indeed the world for almost 3/4 of a century. What we see here now, the events that unfolded, the people we meet and their actions during that time, fashioned the world we live in today.
The roaring of all the planes going over, it's something you'll never forget, I'll guarantee.
6 June 1944, England. Just after midnight, enormous formations of Allied bombers, transports, and gliders depart for Normandy in the first phase of Operation Overlord. Aboard is the first wave of the long-awaited cross-channel invasion. Paratroops of the U.S. 82nd and 101st and British 6th Airborne Divisions. Their job is to defend the flanks of the invasion beaches by securing key bridges and road junctures.
Before I came over to Normandy this year, I took a detour to locate the original airfield at Up Ottery in Devon, where the US paratroopers and gliders took off on the eve of D-Day. Any deserted airfield is atmospheric, but here the history is tangible. It's quite an eerie thing to go trundling up and down the old runways where once would have been DC-3s, gliders, training aircraft. Some of the old buildings are left there where the men would have been stationed. It's quite a bleak place this time of year. I don't think we're actually allowed to be here, but what the hell, nobody's shot me yet. There in the distance is the tower, control tower. Quite a few ghosts around in this area, I guess. These guys set off from a beautiful Typical English landscape. And jumped into God knows what.
The tension in the air is palpable. There is the occasional joke, gallows humor in the face of fear. But mostly all that can be heard is the drone of the engines.
The primary mission of the 101st Airborne was to take the town of Carentan. By doing so, they would link the beachheads at Omaha and Utah into a continuous front.
The guys went out of that thing like they're shot out of a gun.
British 6th Airborne Division are charged with securing bridges over the Dives and Orne rivers. In addition, they are to silence a massive German battery near Merville that is zeroed in on the far eastern invasion beach. In a daring maneuver, the Brits in Horsa gliders land mere yards from a crucial bridge over the Orne. The Germans, caught completely off guard, are quickly routed. A small cafe near the bridge is set up as a field hospital, and the troops brace themselves for a counterattack.
I'm here to meet some guys from England. They said they're around here somewhere, but obviously I think they're pretty well camouflaged. Difficult to find anybody around here, and no wonder people got so lost. I can hear a vehicle. There they are. Down the narrow twisting lanes, I followed my contact Darren to the Round Canopy Parachute Team's HQ near Fraysville, just outside Sainte-Mère-Église. I soon found out that these guys were a truly international bunch, who all had their own reasons for doing what they do.
Morning. Born in Buffalo, New York. My day job, serving in parachute units since 1997. When I was a cadet and coming up, kind of gave me the impression that paratroopers were the best, the baddest of the bad. Culminated with commanding a battalion of the 82nd over in Afghanistan.
I've done reenacting and living history in the UK, and then I came out here and decided to take the ultimate step and start parachuting. It's partial insanity, I think. It's a mixture of things. There is the thing, keeping the history alive, keeping the memory of these guys alive, whether they were British, Americans, German, French, keeping the history alive of what they actually did and what they went through and what they suffered.
As usual, many of the guys take their research and personal interest very seriously.
At Fort Bragg, the 82nd Living History Detachment took our job as portraying things accurately, very seriously, and we were all serving paratroopers. Used to rankle a lot of the other people that did it on the weekend, that we were very precise and very accurate in our portrayals. You want to portray to the general public the accuracy and where to cut corners and, you know, where does Hollywood begin, and to the point where sometimes other reenactors didn't like having us around. You have the rotund, you know, the pushing maximum density, heavy drop. But our unit was actual serving officers and non-coms and then some privates.
Still don't know why.
Why we jump? I live in Eerde, that's in the middle of the drop zone of the 501st Parachute Infantry Regiment. We jumped there in September 1944, and I've been studying this regiment for over 35 years. In fact, I've got 3 reasons, I have them with me. That are these guys. This is Jacob Wingard. He was a observer of a mortar platoon, and he was killed in a windmill in Eerde. And I'm the miller of the windmill. His helmet is still in there. The bullet hole, which was lodged in the wall, is still there. We renovated the windmill, so it's back in the state as it was in 1944. The other reason is this guy. This is Bobby Hunter, D Company 501, landed in our backyard, and he became a second dad to me. He got me into this parachute thing because he saw me as his second son.
If you hold your elbow up in about 1 arm's length.
He called me up and he said, my son's joining the Airborne demonstration team and I want both sons to do it. So that's how I got into parachuting. And the other guy, this is Bert Collier. It's his lieutenant. And I got very close to those guys. And that's the reason I'm jumping, to honor them. I do it for the history. I don't want to show off. I do it out of respect of the guys who came here. And we have a tradition together with Jim Locke. Every time I'm on the drop zone, we take a sip of whiskey and a big cigar, and we honor the guys who didn't make it. That's the reason why we jump.
Being a member of an airborne living history group is a little more complex than being ground-based and driving, say, a jeep or truck or even a tank. Although the ground guys take their interest equally seriously and are very careful about how they portray and use their heavy machines, they are not leaping out of a perfectly good airplane 1,500 feet from the ground with only some string and silk and Mother Earth to break their fall. There are strict rules. Despite the apparent air of levity, there has also been an awful lot of pre-training for this.
Basically, all of Normandy is a drop zone, but we're going to do our best to get inside this red box that's right here. Do not do a downwind landing today.
People have to be qualified and pass exams and assessment before they can even put a chute on.
Fear is adrenaline, and then adrenaline turns into enjoyment.
It's just like any other airborne course. You do 5 qualifying jumps, and then you get your wings and you're a qualified parachutist, and then you can do all the Normandy, commemorations, market garden.
You're going to get whatever stick you're on, stand up, and you're going to stand up towards the open door. Take a bite 2 inches. Try to take it a little bit underneath the sewn webbing, because that's where the safety is going to grab it. All right, it's really quiet. You can hear everything, but this thing's a kite. You cannot fall out of the air.
The two divisions, whose drop zone constituted the right flank of the invasion force, were to clear the way for the landing force at Utah Beach, to soften the German defenses for the attack to follow, and capture a handful of bridges that would be vital to any German effort at reinforcing the coastal defensive. No sooner had the first wave of 9 C-47s passed over the French coast than they found themselves completely enveloped by heavy clouds. The lead group of 3 planes held course, but the 2 following groups veered off in opposite directions as the pilots sought to avoid the possibility of mid-air collisions. Thus disrupted, the formation disintegrated completely.
The sergeant woke me up saying, "Sir, we're coming in over France." As we'd gotten the red light to stand up 5,000 yards offshore. In case there was any aircraft fire, we might have a chance to get out of the ship if it was hit. And I'm watching that black coast of France come sliding in from under the left wing, and we got 8 minutes to the drop zone flying time. And then we got 4 minutes from that till you're back out over the channel again. And I'm looking out of the door, looking ahead, and I can see fires burning on the ground, and I yelled to the troops, "We're in great shape. The Air Corps bombed hell out of things. The houses burning up ahead of us." I didn't realize till the next day that those weren't houses. They were planes from the serial ahead of us that had been shot down.
Heavy fire from German anti-aircraft positions added to the pilots' fear and confusion, and coupled with the cloud cover, practically guaranteed that they would not be able to hit their precise drop points.
Just before we jumped out of our plane, we were in the line, we were in the door. You could hear the artillery shells and whatnot, and all of a sudden we heard a hell of an explosion, and I was right up near the door behind the sergeant. And we looked over to the right, the plane there with jumpers in it just deteriorated. There was 17 guys, jumpers, 2 pilots, and a co-pilot. Every one of them dead right now. That's when you first, registration comes, first time in your life, you're in combat.
The plane I was in, we had never reached a jump yet. We hadn't stood or hooked up. Our plane got a direct hit. Until this day, I cannot tell you how I got out of the airplane. I guess I was the only survivor out of the plane.
The guys flying those planes were rookies like us, okay? We'd never been in combat. They had never been in combat. And where they were supposed to take you didn't happen to too many of us. The minute Germans started opening up, shooting at them, and they were flying low. They started spreading out. They didn't hold their formation. They dropped it here and there. They didn't slow down like they're supposed to. And the guys came out, and the chute snapped open so hard, gun in a holder would bust off of their side. Their water canteens would break right off their belt. And some of them, you know, got hurt because of the opening shock.
The guys went out of that thing like they're shot out of a gun. The number 6 man, the plane yawed wildly. He had his carbine stuck through his webbing, and he was lodged there. But he wasn't there 2.5 seconds. Those guys built up behind him. All I could think was somebody squeezing a grate. He was gone too. I was looking down, and I could see water reflected in moonlight, and I could see what in that fleeting glimpse seemed to be white caps. I said, "Stop, we're over the ocean." I don't think the guy even knew I was there. I think he was so frantic to get out of that plane. He ran right through me, and I bounced off the door to the crapper, to the head. And 3 times more, "Stop, we're over the ocean." Same thing. I got so tired of bouncing off that damn aluminum door. All of a sudden, that was the emptiest cabin I ever saw in my life. Even the crew chief was gone.
It's the best feeling, especially with the C-47 jumps, because you've got that notorious block blast. When you exit the door's there and the engine is just there, so all that turbulence actually pushes you to your left when you come out. You jump out and the prop blast actually turns you to the left, and it's a bit more of a sideways sort of opening. It's not a long drop. The first one is terrifying because it's just so unnatural. No, the second one was the worst because you know what to expect. The second time round, you've also seen the parachute being packed, so you know exactly what goes in that bag, which makes it a little bit more, have I done this right, have I done that right? As many people will tell you, the reason RCPT do it is to honour the guys who never made it, and also the veterans that are still here.
Sometimes the historical connections between then and now can seem a little too real. And, as this young paratrooper currently on active service for the 82nd Airborne tells us, it was different back then.
That would have been nerve-wracking because they would have had more on them. They would have had a whole combat load in addition to it being nighttime and bullets flying in the air. That would complicate things. It's already a difficult task, but to add that on top of it would make it that much more stressful for those paratroopers back in 1944. I was older than my great-grandfather. He didn't jump in, but he did storm Omaha Beach. So it's kind of surreal to be here doing this 73 years later when he did it for real.
I landed just by the side of the river at Lafayette, and I was coming off the drop zone, and there was an 82nd Airborne veteran there. He asked me how old I was, and I told him I'm 20. He said I was 20 as well when I came here 70 years ago, and he said, where did you land? I said, just over there by the side of the river. He said, that's near enough where I landed 70 years ago. And I think that was one of the best memories I have. Obviously we can't ever experience what they went through. We wouldn't want to. We have the highest respect for what they did, and unbelievable sacrifices that they made. But it was great to share a conversation about that prop blast from the C-47. You know, to have something in common as well and be able to talk about was great. Really great.
Sound off for equipment check.
With the run-throughs complete and the jumpers all checked out, it was time for the ground team to get the LZ ready while the jumpers drove to Cherbourg to pick up their aircraft.
So what we've got to do is get to the drop zone.
Maybe this has achieved some kind of folklore status, a mythical part of our past, that's still accessible.
What are the chances they're going to actually jump with the winds and stuff?
You don't like to jump more than 13 knots. Once the jump starts, like when I was in with the 82nd, once they got all that mass tack, you jumped. They do not stop the sticks, the flights.
Seems like we've sort of arrived a bit earlier than the rest of the team, so we could be either left or right of this road. take some readings on scene, and then decide the best place for the team. After that, the ground team will actually go around the fields and sort of marking out hazards like barbed wire, anything that can cause injury to the guys that are coming in. So yeah, a bit of work to do before the actual drop takes place.
The jump was to take place over the small village of Fraysville, close to Sainte-Mère-Église, and one of the many desperate and confusing small battles fought out in the Normandy countryside in the early hours of June the 6th.
The difficult task of landing the gliders is made even more harrowing by mine-tipped stakes dotting the French countryside. Their senses peaked. Every snap of a twig or rustling leaf raises the hair on the backs of their necks. Slowly, they form into small groups, attempting to reach their objectives. Several units of the 82nd land directly in Sainte-Mère-Église.
Gliders pull the airborne people, which my brother happened to land at 2 a.m. in the morning, about 2 miles out of Sainte-Mère-Église, with objective fire for the USS Nevada.
Sainte-Mère-Église itself has become almost a shrine to the spirit of the American airborne troops and their many followers, and as such is a little touristy. But this is the place where some of the scattered 82nd Airborne parachutists landed, in the middle of town. Some hung up on trees, one on the church, and many shot and killed as they attempted to land. After fierce fighting by the scattered troops in the area, the town became the first to be liberated in France.
Somewhere between 40 and 50 when I picked up a machine gun team. And as usual, the big guy was carrying the tripod, the little guy was carrying the machine gun. And they said, "What's your plan?" I said, "Fall in behind me." You should have heard that guy swear at me.
In the kind of irony that only war can produce, the confusion among the paratroops also worked in their favor. The German command could detect little rhyme or reason to the drops. Unable to determine where the weight of the attack was concentrated, they couldn't decide how to deploy their defenses.
With surprise on their side, the paratroops succeed in driving the startled Germans from the town, thus securing the first French city to be liberated by the Allies.
A few miles away in Fraysville, we awaited the jump of the RCPT. I'm here in the middle of a field in Normandy, setting up the landing zone for elements of the 82nd and 101st Reenactment Group, and also the RCPT.
We represent 506, 3rd Battalion. There was a group of 13 men called the Filthy 13. They left from Exeter a few hours before the main landed. Most of them were engineers, 101st Airborne engineers, and they were dropped in various places. Some put beacons up to guide the planes, others blew strategic places up, like at Brabant. There's a very grey area as to why they did this. Apparently the official reason was they were called the Filthy 13. They never washed, and because they never washed, they suffered with lice. So to stop the lice, they took their hair right off. And other people say the Germans were told that the Filthy 13 were Native American Indians, Mohawk Indians. So they shaved their heads, painted their faces to scare the Germans.
Have you washed?
Yes, every day. But I've not shaved today. So yeah.
And we're busy setting this up so that they've got a target to land in when they jump out of the Dakota.
The maximum for us is 12 knots regular and 15 when gust 15.
Yeah.
If it's now, it's okay. Vous allez arriver de la mer, c'est ça, et donc vous verrez par la porte le thé légèrement décalé.
And on the threshold of conditions, we were relieved to see the 73-year-old C-47 come into view. The jump master and his stick go through their preparations. As the lumbering C-47 circles the drop zone. Finding the DZ in these conditions is not easy, and a marker is dropped to help gauge wind direction. The guys on D-Day did not have this luxury. Then the aircraft were hit by flak batteries and other ground fire as the pilots fought to keep control of their craft, many being lost on the way. Then comes the most anxious moment, where training and a good jump master come into effect.
The first one is terrifying. You shouldn't jump out of a normal working aeroplane.
You've got to fear it before the adrenaline goes, and then once the adrenaline goes you get addicted, and then it becomes enjoyable.
In the C-47 you just need to throw your right leg out, jump out, and the prop glass actually turns you to the left.
Both sticks managed to exit the aircraft successfully.
Bounce. I watched some of these young American Airborne guys yesterday, and when they hit the ground they bounce. I don't bounce anymore, I just dig a divot.
After that, each man is on his own. Strong winds blew many of the jumpers into adjacent fields, some frightening the local residents.
Allez, allez, allez! It's okay! It's all right!
How was that?
That was very good.
Yeah.
It's a quick landing, fast.
And I came in on a little road, took about 3-4 running steps, and went right through a wooden fence head first. Broke 2 teeth off. Just broke them off, you know, the nerves are hanging out and all. And getting out of your harness in those days was a bugger. Later on they came with enough, but you just turned and hit and they all released. These you had to unhook. And with all that equipment on, it was a... Anyhow, I tried to get out of my chute, and I was having problems, so I pulled my folding stock carbine out and loaded it for shooting, and I looked up and the people that were right in the yard next to me were gone, period. They were long gone.
Brilliant, brilliant. A lot of wind. I was out late and I could not make it to the drop zone, so I landed right here in the field between the cows. And it's funny because cows are standing in the field and they don't look up, so I started making a lot of noise and then they separated, and that's how I went through it.
I made some friends, especially, and my parachute did as well, in form of, you know, this brown stuff.
Gick ju före oss. Jag lämnade på den sidan, tror jag. It's not a landing, it's a line from another chute.
We had a safe landing, and that's the most important one.
Securely on the ground, there was a fair amount of celebrating later in the day, and our cameras moved on across the battlefield to Sainte-Mère-Église, close to Utah Beach and the scene again of heavy fighting. Here we met with Dutch reenactors in the town square.
I'm still used to do the double clutch, even in the Jeep I'm double clutching.
Yeah, me too.
There's no need for, but I still do it. It's a habit. I can't get out of this habit.
Mostly portraying 82nd or 101st Airborne troops, who encountered some bitter fighting as they fought to keep the roads open to Utah Beach, so that the 4th Infantry Division could work its way inland.
American troops coming ashore at Utah Beach are pulled 2,000 yards east of their assigned zone by strong coastal currents. What appears at first to be disastrous for the U.S. 4th Division turns out, in fact, to be a lucky break. The defenses in this area have been wholly decimated by naval gunfire. Giant coastal guns are heaps of twisted metal, and machine gun pits have been buried in avalanches of sand and debris. Resistance is quickly smashed, and by afternoon, advance units have made contact with the paratroops of the 82nd.
The weather worsened, and people sheltered where they could. Have you come far?
From the Picardy, close to Paris.
Okay.
But myself, I'm from Holland.
presenting a great opportunity to meet one guy who had been here 73 years ago.
My name is Milt Staley. I landed here at Utah Beach on D-Day. I was attached to the 4th Division, the 4-leaf clover. As I recall, I thought it was sunny, I'm not sure. They cleared up for D-Day and we were laying on the beach after we got ashore.
When the men of the 4th Division came ashore at Utah, the 101st were waiting in the dunes to greet them.
Well, it's a long story, but they brought up 2 tanks, and they said there was some woods there, and they said that they figured there's about 300 Germans in the woods, so they put some of the guys on the tanks. I don't know what we're supposed to do with 300 of them. We're going down the road, and the first tank hit a mine, tipped over, and that aborted the mission. Nobody got hurt. Scared. See, with the 4th Division, when they put us with us, we were back of the church in Sainte-Mère-Église. The 82nd Airborne had dug in, and when they left, then we took it over for that one night. Torquay.
Yeah.
It's not too far from Plymouth. People were good, countryside, a lot of flowers. Yeah, they treated us real good. Well, I drank a lot of beer in them days.
It didn't matter, huh?
Yeah, it didn't matter. Then, 23.
23.
98 now.
Thank you.
This is his 4th
That's
time
a big
besides
one.
the original.
Yeah. First time was free.
Right. This restoration and reenacting pastime is not entirely new to us. When I first started coming to Normandy, 15 years ago or something, we were just a ragtag bunch of lunatics who enjoyed restoring old vehicles and going to famous places. And expeditions to the Normandy battlefields have been a major part of this pastime. Normandy has become almost like a pilgrimage. It is the battlefield. There is a reverence, a homage, an act of respect.
Just a little.
Because this was a very mechanised war, if you're reenacting it, at some point you're going to need something mechanical. And a lot of that is very, very heavy metal. Sometimes finding and retrieving these old pieces of heavy metal involves a fair amount of work before you even start restoring. I had to dig these 2 Dodge trucks out of a swamp in Canada. After almost 20 years of sinking into the ground, and then some gentle coaxing, one of the trucks eventually fired and ran, but it didn't stop very long. To get a further insight into this world, I arranged to meet Jim Clark of Allied Forces Canvas for brunch at his workshop deep in the Gloucestershire countryside. Believe me, he has some really big pieces of heavy metal. Morning, gentlemen. I should have known I'd end up being chief cook and bottle washer. It's always the same with these guys. Highly trained, experienced cameraman, world traveller, still ends up having to cook the bacon and eggs in a garage. I got some multigrain bread to make you fit and healthy. Egg, bacon, thick bread, all you need. You joining us, Paul? As I got on with cooking breakfast on a World War II petrol stove, Jim busied himself with something a bit more technical. On his wartime Mack truck, one of the US Army's prime movers.
Trouble with the fuel system. I think the turbo's playing up, but the other thing is the fuel pump needs winding up a bit. Give it more boost.
With machines of this age, there's always something that has to be done. Such a lovely day in England, we don't get many of these, so we better sit outside and enjoy it. While I'm messing about with this, Jimmy's on the phone talking to somebody in, what was it, Bordeaux? Bordeaux. About the big thing behind us there. So tell us about this thing then.
Right, it's an M4 high-speed tractor.
Yeah.
Built in 1944 by Alice Chalmers. Well, I got the tractor and I bought the gun to go with it, a 90mm anti-aircraft gun. Marked them up in the markings, 1st Infantry Division, because as you know, we've been following 1st Infantry Division since 97 when we first done a Weymouth.
Yeah. They went to Omaha.
They went in on D+1A.
On D+1?
Yeah.
So is that why you guys like going back to Normandy so much?
Yeah, because obviously where we live, all this area and south of us was just littered with camps and stores, dumps and vehicle parks and ready for D-Day to go over, and that's why we've done that so many times.
The contact in Bordeaux had come up with information that placed Jim's high-speed tractor as one of the vehicles that landed at Omaha Beach on D+1.
So I give him my chassis number and he's literally just come back with the registration numbers for them.
So is that kind of authenticity important to you?
Yeah, it is, because there's no point in having a vehicle and taking it to Normandy or taking it to any show with markings which are completely wrong.
How long have you been doing this then?
We started in 1998. It was just a hobby, it was just something to do half a day a week. And it's now 2018, so we've been doing it 20 years.
From those early years, Jim has built up a successful business, supplying canvas hoods, fittings and rebuilds for the people who restore these machines worldwide. Living history has now become more popular, but years ago, when we arrived in Sainte-Mère-Église for the 60th anniversary of D-Day, it was more like a bunch of like-minded blokes who really liked the jeeps, trucks and tanks, grabbing bits of complementary uniforms where they could, and were not so set on the full immersion of the historical recreation of the times. Jim Clark takes up the story of his fascination in the early days with wartime military machines.
My GMC that I bought that we went to France in, that was ex-Norwegian, and it only had something like 14,000 miles on the clock, and it was in mint, kept in storage.
And why the American vehicles in particular?
The American vehicles were much nicer to look at. There's more style. You know, a Diamond T, for instance, is lovely, the shape of it. Or even the sort of GMC, it's got lovely lines. Because they were manufacturing cars and vehicles, trucks and things, they were stylish, you know. Our stuff was a bit Heath Robinson. It's just, you know, flat panels, angle iron, and some of them, I do love them, but they are hideous. They really are. You know, look at the Ford and the Chevy C15 cabs and 13 cabs. They're just ugly, but they are appealing to some people. But not my cup of tea. I just like the American stuff.
The story of Normandy and the invasion of Hitler's Europe has been no stranger to these guys, and perhaps because of the massive historical impact of this event, has drawn them to these beaches for many years. Following that fascination with this period in time, for the 60th anniversary of D-Day, we'd attended a parade in Weymouth and met up along the front at the original 1st Infantry Division embarkation port. Then the Normandy veterans were still relatively sprightly, showing a great interest in the vehicles the group had provided. The crowds are very appreciative, and there's a real sense of occasion. A respectful acknowledgement of the achievements of previous generations. And despite the realisation that time was even now running out for these veterans, there was of course a lot of cheeky British humour to lighten the load. One GMC helped another, and we headed to the original wartime embarkation ramps. After ceremoniously dipping the trucks in the English Channel, on the same hard standings that the Big Red One had used to board their landing craft 60 years previously, the small convoy of trucks, jeeps and enthusiastic hangers-on boarded the cross-channel ferry to Cherbourg. It was not a good crossing. Dodgy food, dodgy beer and bouncy seas dampened a few spirits. But on landing, the drive down the main road to Sainte-Mère-Église brought us to our first main destination. As this was the 60th anniversary of D-Day, the present 82nd Airborne were on hand to provide ceremonial duties, honouring those past and present. It was one of those leaps in time to see the fresh-faced young kids of 18 to 20 years old parading through the town square, where so many of their company predecessors had landed, fought and died 60 years before. Ever keen to get our trucks into some off-road action and a breath of fresh air, we roared past some of the other guys in the town square, heading for the beach at Utah.
Hopefully we can actually get on the beach just down here.
The sand looks wider up there.
We're going to drive down, there's the French.
First time I came, and I came in the ambulance. We went in through Caen and stayed in a chateau, miles from anywhere, way too far down. So every time we wanted to do anything, I had to drive for ages and ages just to get up to the beaches and all that.
After an hour of thoroughly enjoying ourselves, the tide came up and narrowed the beach. And the soft sand showed what a problem it could be, even for a six-wheel truck in high or low ratio.
Stuck fast. I'm afraid. I know, I picked the speed up as I came around the corner, and now won't go forwards or backwards.
Just the occasion to find out who your mates really are and if their winch still works. Further east, we followed the coast towards Omaha, looking for Point du Hoc, but also stumbled across a relatively new development in the Normandy story. The battery at Grand Camp Maisie was an impressive array of long-range artillery pieces covering Utah and Omaha beaches.
We enjoy this place here.
Yeah?
And we learned that's a very interesting site.
It was almost hidden from view at the time of D-Day, and built in total secrecy. It was to have been taken by the Rangers. Newly discovered German bunkers that weren't taken until the 9th of June. Apparently the Rangers were supposed to take them earlier than that, but their commanding officer didn't move off the Point du Hoc. These guns bombarded the American positions on Utah and Omaha. This must have been horrendous. You can see why the shelling did not have much effect. They were so well concealed that any accurate aerial bombing was almost impossible. These walls are thick. Very, very thick. The lights go out, I'm buggered. The owner of this museum took it on himself to explore it and started digging and uncovered this because part of the way through June the US Army bulldozed all over this land, covered it up. Further east, the almost impregnable and commanding gun battery of Point du Hoc stands as a monument to the tenacity and aggression of the US Rangers as they scaled the near vertical cliffs and silenced the garrison there. The position had been blown to pieces by US warships and Allied bombers, but the guns were not in location. They were being refitted at workshops further inland. What began as a routine tour of the battlefield, with some fine reenactments and a homage to the veterans of this battle, started to take a darker turn, and slowly came to mean something more intimate, revealing the complexities, both personal, political and military, of the nature of this campaign.
Disaster looms. The rough seas and bitter German resistance threatened to throw the men of the U.S. 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions back into the sea. Dual-drive tanks, unable to weather the heavy surf, sink long before reaching shore. The men, heavily laden with equipment, struggled through the chest-deep water, subjected to streams of machine gun fire and crashing shells. Many who are wounded, unable to fight the surging sea, drown. Those who reach shore huddle behind beach obstacles, gasping for breath, longing for safety, which is raked by German machine gun fire. Hundreds die in the frantic dash. The beach is littered with the broken bodies of men and smoldering equipment.
Much has been written about Omaha Beach and the horrendous losses the Americans suffered there. Many of those who died or were wounded on this infamous stretch of sand and shingle set off from places like Broadmain on the 5th of June, embarked on their ships in ports such as Weymouth, and said goodbye to England forever. At Omaha, the bluffs the landing troops had to assault are now more eroded, but in 1944 they were steep and defended by machine gun nests, well-sighted guns in deep bunkers, minefields, and pounded by the heavy guns of Grand Camp Maisie. And it is the link between places like Broadmain Camp in England to this beach and others that first brought our reenactors here many years ago. At around 6:30 a.m. on the 6th of June 2004, we drove to Omaha Beach and parked up our trucks as a service was being held on the bluffs at one of the memorials to those who gave their lives on that fateful day 60 years ago, almost to the hour. Part of the display for this event was a collection of ducks, or DUKWs, a seaborne version of the ubiquitous GMC 6x6, fitted with a boat hull and propeller that could take supplies, jeeps and guns from the larger vessels and drive them through the surf, up the beach and to the points of dispersal. Having driven one myself, they are somewhat challenging in rough weather, but on D-Day they performed their duties perfectly. Many of these shown here had actually sailed under their own power across the channel to Omaha Beach. We'd taken our trucks and jeeps up and down the shingle beach of Omaha, again encountering some of the difficulties facing the second waves of transport, which was vital to build up the supply of men, machines and supplies to the beachhead. To gain a rough insight into the logistics and number of vehicles involved during the 60th anniversary event, we sat back and watched the restored machines and their crews, who had come from many parts of Europe and even across the pond in the USA, roll inland from the Normandy beaches. This was a very small percentage of what actually happened on D-Day, but nevertheless it gives an impression of the amount of materiel involved in this campaign, and also how important it was to winning the battle to build up these forces against a well-defended and experienced foe. The size of the American cemetery above Omaha Beach is compounded by American casualties from other parts of the Normandy campaign. And slowly, in mute reflection, the scale of the losses sinks into the visitor.
K. Kittle, Elmo C. Farrow, Joseph Grillo, Edward J. Fogarty Jr., Howard Greenberg, Herbert L. Earl, William C. McGrath.
As we moved further east to the British and Canadian sectors of Gold, Sword and Juno beaches, there was further evidence of the task facing the Allies. The huge guns of the battery at Long-sur-Mer remain now as an imposing monument and were able to cover both the British on Gold and Juno beaches and the Americans on Omaha. 2 of the batteries were disabled by direct hits from British warships in the early morning. But it wasn't until later in the day the guns were finally silenced by combined barrages from more British, French and American warships.
On the far left, on Sword Beach, the men of the British 3rd Infantry Division meet lighter resistance than expected. The Brits quickly fight their way off the beaches and begin pushing inland to link up with the paratroops of the 6th Division.
All along the coast road, small monuments and relics highlight scenes of intense fighting by the British, Canadian and French troops against a well-prepared and strongly fortified enemy. The seaside town of Arromanches was spared heavy bombardment, as it was planned to be used as an operational port, fed by the floating Mulberry Harbour. It was taken by the British after heavy fighting involving specialist tanks, and is now a central point for veterans associations and visitors. No matter how much flag waving, nostalgia and singing we do now, some of the guys who were there even 73 years later cannot get over the bitterness and hurt of those 80 days fierce fighting in Normandy. We caught up with some of them in a noisy pub in Arromanches, near where they landed 73 years ago. Some of these guys have achieved almost celebrity status and seem a little bemused by it all.
I was on landing ships, I landed between Sword Beach and I went right away from beating the Germans in Normandy to beating the Japanese, and all of a sudden, thank God, the Americans dropped the atom bomb. We didn't have to go.
Second day at Juno Beach. The Kings were alright, we got with the Premier Light Infantry Regiment. The tanks can't move if they got up against a defensive position or a dodgy position. They can't go nowhere, they get knocked out. So the infantry has to go in and see what's going and clear the way. You can only use anti-tank guns, it's static, you can't put them on the move, so you don't use them too often. So you relied on the Piat gun, which was a heap of crap.
One of the many problems fighting in Normandy was working your way through the Bocage country.
They were too well entrenched. Bocage was little areas, you couldn't see them. You couldn't see a tank that was dug in, you couldn't see an anti-tank gun, you couldn't see a mortar, you couldn't see a machine gun, you couldn't see them. They did this, come out of nowhere. Greatest defence position.
M4s were sometimes fitted with a Cullen device, a kind of plough fitted to the front of the tank, designed to gouge out gaps in the tangled hedgerows and allow some freedom of movement. Frequently, the first one through the gap was the first casualty. These gaps in the hedgerows allowed the infantry to break through into the next field. But all too often the dug-in Germans already had the tanks and the infantry in their sights. It was a costly business. Advances were often measured in yards as the Allies fought their way field by field, village by village, to break out from their beachhead. The Battle of Normandy became a sustained, grinding battle of nerves, straining men and machines to the limit.
The man who designed our tank never ever got in one. Wouldn't have had any care for whether he lived or not. Fucking useless, ping pong ball. And the German machine gun, you fired so fast, it was sounding like a dog. You're going, wow. Did you know you smelled German? All the boots were leather up to their knees. All their webbing, it was all leather. And they used to dress it with a special dressing. They used to stink. And if the wind's blowing, you can smell them. Frightening. War's never done anybody good. Never done it.
Old engineer.
The same people who built the Mulberry Harbour, but I was on demolition, used to blow things up. You must understand that what the British Tommy got was a shilling a day. That's what he got, shilling a day, licensed murderer. I lost a lot of my mates here, and all for nothing really. That's Legion d'Honour, Chevalier, and I never had anything from the English government at all. Only headache.
A few miles inland, the British cemetery in the ancient town of Bayeux was where I met with Alfred Barlow of a reconnaissance unit.
I was Corporal Alfred Barlow at the 3rd Reconnaissance Regiment, landed just off the beach at Nook-sur-Mer. They dropped us into the water in our vehicle at about 10 o'clock in the morning, and we made our way through about 300 yards of water onto the beach. We came up onto the roadway towards Caen, and we were supposed to take Caen on the first day, but we didn't.
It's the ages of the men that are here. Kids of 18. You know, when I was 18, I could scarcely take the top off a lemonade bottle. Royal Marines Commando, 6th of June 1944, age 20. The East Yorks landed not far from here, and 250 of them were killed before midday. Big cemeteries are impressive, if that's the right word, in their size and scale. But also what really tugs at the heartstrings are the small cemeteries found at the side of the road, tucked away somewhere, still kept neat, tidy, tended. The German cemetery was also vast, with a sombre Teutonic atmosphere. The other cemeteries were smaller, the dead buried where they fell at the many ferocious actions between the fields and hedgerows. And for me, there was a comprehension here of the actual people, not just the numbers. On our way east, we detoured to take a look at a place where things went very wrong for the British, emphasising the size of this battlefield and the deadly effectiveness of the German forces. Villers-Bocage. As part of the pincer movement, an attack was ordered by General Dempsey involving the 7th Armoured Division, the well-known and effective Desert Rats. Their commanding officer at the time halted here and parked the division along the road. What he didn't know is that in the fields and woodlands close by was a small squadron of Tiger tanks. Now that might not seem much of a threat to an armoured division, but if you have a small squadron of Tiger tanks commanded by Whitman, it spells trouble. Whitman couldn't believe his eyes apparently. The whole division was parked up here, broadside on. Soft-skin vehicles, tanks, half-tracks, everything parked here waiting. So he simply found a parallel road. He turned his turret 90 degrees, slowly, methodically eliminating the 7th Armoured Division. Carnage was horrendous, but the damage to the pride of the 7th Armoured was something I don't think they ever recovered from. Coming to the end of this amazing trip, we reached the eastern flank of the invasion area, and the first building to be liberated by the Allies in France, again by airborne forces. This time, it was the Brits at Pegasus Bridge.
After capturing the bridges, the airborne troops dug in to deny German forces access to the eastern flank of the invasion area. Madame Durand's cafe became a casualty station until the troops were relieved.
With characteristic understatement, Dennis Coates told us some of his story.
Oh, it's cold. Thank you, my dear. When?
Yeah.
The night before, the 5th, the night of the 5th, we landed. The hope was that we would have sorted it all out before the boats came in. It got a bit difficult. The problem was that we had a secondary
jobs to do. Nobody landed here. Who brought the land here? No, they came in by glider here. Yeah. We should have come in Varaville, I think it was, dropping zone. But our pilots got deflected. Somebody was potting at them, I believe, and they didn't like it, so they got deflected towards the Dive. So they dropped half of the fellas in the Dive, in the floodwater, and the remainder of us on the land beyond it, you know. Canadians and the 8th Battalion had blown up the blasted bridges. We were not popular. After a lot of fun and games, and a week or so, we got captured. Yeah, and I got wounded, but we had some interesting times before we got captured.
In overwhelming odds and lacking proper equipment, they attack. Casualties are horrendous as the men fight their way through the German defenses. After a harrowing night, the roar of naval gunfire can be heard in the distance. It is a welcome sound to the weary ears of the Allied paratroops. They have done their part to assure the success of Operation Overlord. Both flanks are secure, and exit roads from the beaches are in Allied hands. The airborne troops must hang on until relieved, but for now, all they can do is pray for the thousands of men who are about to step into history on the beaches of Normandy.
Guarding the flanks of the invasion fleet were squadrons of Royal Navy motor gunboats, one of which was moored up next to Pegasus Bridge.
Not many boats can make it across the channel from Plymouth to Normandy in 3 hours, but not many boats are powered by 3 Spitfire engines.
She's a 2-pounder on the front, then you've got the twin Lewis guns either side.
Yeah.
Up half you've got the twin 20mm Oerlikons. We cruise at about 28 knots. Her main use, in a nutshell, is for causing trouble. It was get into trouble quickly and get out of it quicker. And I love it. This is my 4th trip to Normandy, and I wish to keep on coming.
Leaving the famous Pegasus Bridge, we started to head home, south to Paris, then England. In total contrast to the rough and obvious aspects of war, the beautiful Chateau Audrey south of Bayeux stands serene amongst tended grounds, trees and ornamental lakes. But it too yields a sinister secret.
I wasn't aware actually that we were sitting right next door to a place of infamy.
After fighting hard along the coast and further inland against the 12th SS Panzer Division, dozens of Canadians and some British troops were taken here after surrendering against huge and fanatical odds. The SS officers at first interrogated them, but they got little response. So they then had them marched off in small groups with their hands on their heads to the nearby woods and shot. Approximately 147 of them were killed this way.
It's difficult to believe that scenes of such beauty and engineered calm could have produced such a barbaric act. As I found out with several interviews, barbaric acts were carried out by both sides.
In the British cemetery, people are 19, 18, all a wasted time. They could have been all over their mothers if everybody used their local.
The fighting here had reached another level. The conditions, the attrition, and the ferocity provoked things amongst soldiers that they would never believe were possible.
The people of my country, when we were there, we were all murderers. We don't take prisoners. The bloke would have been shot, no trouble. If you take a prisoner, you've got to look for him, because he'll get the first opportunity, he'll kill you.
When you were in the front, a lot of us, we used our hearing and our smell.
From the 6th of June to the 22nd of August, 500,000 men were killed or wounded or missing. So what was all that about?
We put a good number in, and we put them in with force and to hold what we got. That was the important bit.
We held this area for about, I don't know, 10 miles in, I suppose, and that was enough. There came the day when there was not enough of us, too many of them. We had nothing to fight with, they had everything, and so they put us in the bag. We knew they were coming because the motorbikes we dealt with were obviously in advance of the tank. We made it that they had no need of their motorbikes.
Bang, killed the driver, everything stopped.
They shot all the men, put all the women and children in the church and set fire to it.
As days go by, it staggers the imagination that in a few years these people, who have lived through such momentous world-changing times and helped alter the course of history, will be no more. What then of the deeds they perpetuated? Who shall remember them? As good men who did not stand idle, who risked and gave up their lives for what was called the Great Crusade, the fathers, mothers, uncles, aunts, brothers and sisters, who after a drink or two may have regaled us with wartime stories that we could not fully comprehend, they're leaving us now. They will not return. All the veterans I have met are adamant that they were not heroes, but that they were ordinary people doing their job and what was required of them, which sometimes meant doing something remarkable and something occasionally heroic.
People said to save the country. We were only concerned with our families, to be honest.
Following in the footsteps of Allied soldiers from across the globe, assembling in Britain to assault the Normandy beaches and free the world of Nazi tyranny, we know that the reenactor people are not the original heroes. They readily admit that, but they play a vital part in keeping alive the memory of those people who have given so much. And keeping the machines, boats, planes, tanks and trucks that these troops depended upon rolling and operational is a big part of maintaining that memory. All play a factor in remembering these courageous men and women, the lives they lived and lost, and why they fought. Our duty is to never forget them, celebrate the freedom for which they fought, and most of all, to never let this happen again.